Experience working as a Humana underwriting assistant, and then the 6 years at Northwestern and 4 years of other miscellaneous healthcare experience specific to medical law and ethics. And then in my experience working without my knowledge, permission, or consent as a mole for whatever agency was using me, which is what it's been described to me as the whole entire period of 2016 to 2019, where I was human trafficked and extorted and all of that by a detective and a person on a recorded line monitored by the state of Illinois. And I've asked for federal government to request those tapes and give those a listen. You can hear that I was being used for the purpose of passing information without my knowledge. I didn't even know. I was bamboozled and tricked out of naivety, into believing certain things that were not true. Under that understanding, it has been deemed, to my knowledge, in every demographic that once a person is aware, mind you, the state of Illinois put my insurance from Blue Cross Blue Shield Community or Harmony Health to Molina Insurance. Molina. Like a play on words, and I didn't even get it until years between 22 and 23 when conversations began evolving about this possibility that I was being used for the purpose of gathering information, et cetera, and so forth. When all of that is taken into consideration, we've all come to the same demographically understood across, throughout, and within every demographic of understanding has the same understanding. Once awareness is reached, you have an obligation and a commitment to either pay the person a fair living wage and or support this person for the repercussions that this style of work has caused or created. Under that understanding, how do you explain what's going on right now? Let me explain the last 2 days to you, okay? I was promised room and board, right? I paid between $20,000 and $23,000 for one single bedroom with a bathroom in my apartment at 1055 Granville. After being promised room and board and being told that tickets were no longer a thing in my area because of changes in, scheduling and being forced to work in various time frames and things of that nature, all of that being understood, they still have me on 2 payment plans to the city of Chicago each month. 2 payment plans. I also cover my own, as I always have, insurance and car payment. I purchased a vehicle about 10 months ago. So rent, car payment, insurance, and 2 city of Chicago payment plans with very little, if anything, left over at the end of that. Xavier, who has always expressed interest in art, and creating art pieces, I have been coaching in the skills of utilizing various technological abilities and applications like ChatGPT and other content-based and focused on marketing and sales. I have been encouraging him to create his art pieces that are targeted to a specific demographic. So say, for instance, he wants to sell art to a dealership that sells Porsches. He should go into the dealership, take a look at the showroom floor, create a sample with a watermark, make a demo with another sample of a showroom floor and a sample of his art piece on the wall. Find out who owns that location and what they're interested in. Make the artwork customized to their interest. Watermark in place. Offer various canvases. You could do sheet metal. You could do glass, etching in glass. Then he can he can contract the laser printing services that will take his artwork and imprint them into either metal or glass or paint them on canvas or what have you, or just print them on a poster board style, and put it on a mount with glass and a picture frame. He is confident and excels in creating these types of pieces of artwork, however, does not have any experience in sales. Xavier's childhood was spent in various ways that were probably not in alignment with any sort of desirable business outcome as an adult. His investment into learning into learning business has been far less than substantial for a positive outcome for most. My investment into learning business, sales, marketing, medical law and ethics, etc., and so forth is above average. So I have been helping him to understand these lessons. Now, with that being said, let me explain what the last 2 days have looked like. So 2 days ago, after paying between $20,000 and $23,000, I don't know the exact amount, for this bedroom at my apartment and restroom, and Xavier living there with me, us together in a monogamous marriage, heterosexual with traditional gender roles, approximately 7 weeks ago, Xavier wakes up, and if you see my previous video where I'm like kind of still in shock about these lines and these various, I don't know what to call them. I call them technological achievements with regards to offering additional perspective and communication and things of that nature. I explained to you guys that 2 days ago, Xavier was like this, with his mouth subconsciously. He's not doing drugs. He smokes a little pot, to my understanding. That's the only thing. I don't do drugs or drink. He's walking up and down the street like this, with these 10 or more noticeable lines protruding from his neck. And I do have photos of that. Now, under the understanding that this has been going on, also, in unison with that, approximately 7 to 8 weeks ago, Xavier begins wearing a dress and presents with large breast tissue. I, on the other hand, have been being starved. My ribs are very, very much exposed. You can see them through my skin. There's no fat on my upper body at all whatsoever. I could show you my arms here. I've got very little fat on my lower body, and this is it for my arms. I've got nothing extra, nothing. And they say that I shouldn't be eating that much anyway, because going up, you don't eat that much. You don't have necessarily 3 to 5 meals a day. Now, what I know to be true about eating is 3 to 5 meals a day is what you're supposed to do. However, when I was eating that much, I felt lethargic and heavy, and I didn't really like that. So somewhere around 2 balanced meals, to me, healthy, maybe a salad, some rice, and a lean protein for one meal, and maybe, something easier like some ground beef tacos, or, two tacos, or something along those lines, right? Or a single patty burger, or, it doesn't have to be a steak, a $150 meal twice a day, but something balanced, right? And substantial that supports health and wellness. With a background in medical and a background in personal training, I understand the lessons that have been presented with regards to diet. Also working as a diabetic educator with regards to newly diagnosed diabetics at Northwestern for 5 to 6 years. Now, with those understandings and the understanding that Xavier throughout this entire time has not been employed. When I met Xavier, he was employed. He had a contract for a Zumo bicycle, and that's an electric bike, and he would ride the bike. And then a few other times throughout this 4 years that him and I have been together, he was working for his father, writing articles about digital and cryptocurrencies. His father was compensating him between $300 and $500 a week for that, and that was during the period when I was not working. I have been working daily since approximately since approximately March of 2024, about 2 months after Weston was born. At that time, I was working full-time in a ping pong social club as a server, hostess, mobile bartender, and we were handling mostly corporate events, which would be entire venue buyouts. Also, private individuals coming in for games of table tennis, Jenga, Uno, etc. And they would order food. It was catering to all ages, from young to old, and it was kind of a family-friendly environment. So, okay, we have that understanding. After that, I switched to Uber. And then we had the issue with someone's mom perceiving that the rental car I had was the only option they had for a car to sit in. And that person, so the son of that person's mother, intentionally engineered a set of circumstances to make it appear as though I would not be a responsible choice for driving Uber, despite the fact that I have a 4.8 out of 5-star rating and I believe 5,000 rides during that time. Okay, just driving Uber to the airport, from downtown to the suburbs, what have you. After that situation with Uber and this third party that I believe is private, I do not believe it was Uber. I believe it was a private interest that froze my Uber account with a 4.8 and 5,000 rides. I began working food deliveries and other deliveries, Sephora, Home Depot, random little deliveries here or there. With that understanding, hold on one second, you guys. With that understanding, OTL, that there would be a better opportunity for me. I was making at that time between $1,200 and $1,500 a week on average, and I have 4 children and a significant other who hasn't been able to find employment. We don't receive any sort of public service. He doesn't have a link card. I don't have a link card. We don't have welfare. And I am making these food deliveries. At that time, it was deemed appropriate that I would be permitted a better paying job in closer alignment with my education and previous decade of experience. Now, if you add in the extortion from the detective in 2016 to stay around a specific demographic of individuals who were involved in various behaviors and the recorded phone calls that clearly showed numerous issues, unethical and immoral as well as unlawful. Me calling for help in the form of tears for 1 to 2 hours a day, every single day, unable to even engage in productive conversation with my partner. During that time, I also learned marketing and sales. When my partner came home, we began jobs in sales and marketing, renewable energy, specifically windmill farms and solar panel farms. During that time, as sort of a coping method, I would check into artistic outlets. I would do the best I could to depict what I was going through and create a plan for profit specific to the demographic that has been deemed unethical, immoral, and terrible for society's evolution of internet-based sex work opportunities, content creation, phone SEX, cyber SEX, meetups, things of that nature. The communicated purpose and intention for PATH was that in my compliance of the extortive sets of circumstances and the sets of circumstances communicated by my partner at that time, that if I was able to get through those 3 years, which I was, that following that I had built in promotions, in nightlife entertainment, in online marketing and social media management would be converted to a fitness, wellness, and healthy lifestyle following. That was the give and take of the agreement. We were to be married. He was to receive a large inheritance. We were to buy a house in the suburbs where my children and I and he would live safely. And that following would be converted to physical fitness in some way, shape, or form, dietary, wellness, maybe a convertible apparel brand that would be, something practical that could go from taking your child to school, as I did every morning and evening, to, and picking them up, to maybe you have a meeting in the middle of your day, to maybe you need to go to the gym for an hour in between that. And the clothing line was to be convertible in that regard. The understanding was that any harm or contribution to marketing this field, this internet-based, very, aligned morally and ethically with my own standards. I believed in monogamy and had never been than just my husband's and a couple of other people in my life at 28 years old. Now, the understanding was that in doing wellness, any negative impact that was created in gathering information and learning those fields as a mole, if you will, because those phone calls were referenced for business purpose, for strategy purpose, for logistics purpose. Not only was my suffering ignored, I was not compensated at all for those consultations. So people made money and continue to make money off of the knowledge and information that I was forced to learn without my consent, permission, or awareness in most sets of circumstances. Understanding that we have an ethical impact on the world, I was a big time promoter. And by big time, I mean I was having, for my small demographic of individuals that I was interacting with on a regular basis, I was having a huge amount of attention on my postings. That attention was mostly about the environment that I was working in. In an effort to remain ethically aligned, converting and having discussion about how if those industries were permitted to continue growing at the rate that they were growing, at the level of accessibility that they had, they would be deemed extremely predatory for our youth, for our young people, and for anyone living in the world who has a regular job or a monogamous relationship. The understanding over time with regards to the evolution of that field is that it has been extremely detrimental and damaging to a lot of different people, families, and lifestyles. To make up for that, ethics, morals, values, eating healthy, making more socially conscious, ethically conscious, dietary choices, the clothing line and personal training was to be developed on my original path. So those people who had been consuming the content would now be the demographic consuming the wellness, the health, the all of that. I've never stopped working. I've always been working. That path was stolen from me, literally, after I was exploited upon the release of my partner publicly on a TV show and on many various social media platforms and other internet-based technological achievements. I have been working with many different efforts to create a bot system, an AI-driven bot system of addressing, it basically has the functionality to sweep the internet every 30 minutes or so for any mention of your brand, your business names, your legal name, your any aliases or nicknames. And then after collecting your true life story, it has the ability to, of its own doing, make a response to any and all slanderous attempts at campaigning against an otherwise, nice, good person who is taking a change in path. So to go from the path that I was on, to make a break from that path of healthcare, it was easy for them. It was easy. They didn't even need to do much work. They threw me into a path and said, if you don't do this, we're detectives, authoritative individuals. If you don't do this, we're coming to your house and we're taking away your family from you. And that is legally what they said. And there is an entire internal affairs report about the interaction. So we didn't need any AI-driven bots for that campaign. It was very supported. It was very supported, and it was circulated widely. When it came time for them to deliver on their half of the promises, that I could go into health and wellness, that I could even the ethical impact that I had, what we learned about these industries and their long-term likelihood of destruction could be used in a way to create change for beneficial, positive, impact across all demographics, that information has not been associated to any sort of positive outcome for me. And quite the contrary, in fact, I was unlawfully removed from my home, my apartment, where I lived with my children and my partner, my husband, and I say air quotes because it seemed like to me the entire relationship was real, but on the other side, as soon as he was incentivized in any sort of more positive or more desirable outcome for a separation, he was supported by the authority in doing so. And there was no follow-up with regards to what was fair, what was legal, and what was promised to me or my children. At that time in 2019, my children had to go live with their father and father's family members, and I was basically left to die. I didn't have money. I had to create several internet-based fundraising campaigns where I would literally share details of what was going on, asking people for donations, for assistance. Mind you, I'm a woman that doesn't have a criminal record at all, that has never had an addiction. I have had instances during that 3-year period, only during that 3-year period, as a coping method to what I was being forced to engage in. I mean, could you imagine your mother, your child being forced to work and be human sex trafficked? Can you imagine that? And having authoritative, supposedly allies backing that effort, or ignoring it, or looking the other way, or supporting it, or paying for it? If we're keeping it real. Then, as I said, when it came time for the tables to turn and for me to stand back up on my feet, rather than giving me what I had earned, paying me what was owed, I was separated from my children and thrown into the street to die, while they circulated a narrative that I was unwell from a mental perspective and incapable of caring for myself or my children, which has never been the case. Keep in mind, I was working in renewable energy after I stopped, working in that environment. And renewable energy, I don't mean, anything nefarious. I actually mean wind farm sales, subscription of deregulated and renewable energy sales, clean energy sales, and solar power sales. And I was successful, and I was doing well, and I was making between $1,000 and $2,000 a week. I was thrown outside of my house in 2020, January of 2020 to be exact, that my children had to go live with their fathers. That was not by court action. The year now is 2026, and I was just able to stand back up after being held in a tent on cement Harbor during my pregnancy, being separated from my child after he was born. I was able to stand back up only after being discharged from the hospital and having to go sleep on the side of the MCA, Museum of Contemporary Art, wrapped in a moving blanket with Xavier by my side. We could feel rats run over our backs in the nighttime. It was awful. We finally received a few weeks of assistance from the housing system in the form of shelter services. And at that time, it was promised that you do not lose your housing. After you are taken in and your situation is identified and clearly communicated, you are matched with an apartment or house that meets your family's need. That never happened. We spent a few weeks in that situation, and then they put us out of that situation. We slept on the side of the MCA until I was able to begin working again at that social club, the Table Tennis Social Club. And I, with my checks, got us a room for rent and paid for a room for rent for Xavier and I, purchased everything that I needed for our newborn baby, had everything prepared for him to come home, and was not permitted to continue that path. I stayed in a single room apartment setting, paying rent, despite all of the promises for reimbursement and support in continuing in the influencer path and making the conversion from, what it was to health and wellness and lifestyle parenting. It was supposed to include my children, all 4 of them. It was supposed to include sponsorships. It was supposed to include a safe place to live and create this content. And we were for the age groups of each of my children, respectively, as well as myself and Xavier. They never followed through with that. Every attempt that I have made to continue creating content that's positive, that's focused in that path, has been edited nefariously to make me look awful. I mean, awful, absolutely terrible. They have done terrible things with the editing of any and all of my content, or my actual device that I've been making content on has been subjected to external nefarious involvement. I've reported it to law enforcement, to the FBI, to those higher than those two agencies, and here on social media, thousands of times, no less. I've gone to private investment agencies, I've gone to defense lawyers, I've gone to independent advocacy agencies for survivors of all of that. There was no funding. I had to pay the rent that we paid was $1,034 each month. And I paid it myself out of pocket from my paychecks, along with my car payment and my insurance and my cell phone bill. Despite the fact that we were promised room and board and that it was communicated multiple times OTL that those rent payments were going to be held to the side and returned to me at the end of my 2-year lease so that I could use it as a down payment on a house elsewhere. Not a penny was given back to me. And 2 days ago, Xavier and I were forced to gather our belongings and leave my apartment despite having a legal lease agreement that lasts through May of 2027. And the very first night, I was not permitted to sleep at all. I had to sit there. I begged Xavier to please put his belongings at his father's house or in a storage facility. He has a bunch of bags of, I'm not quite sure what. Nothing that he accesses daily or, has any value. He wears pretty much the same 2 or 3 outfits. It's also worth mentioning that during that time is when he began to develop breast tissue and wear a dress for the first time in the 4 years we were together. I don't know why, and I still have not received any explanation. He says it's because of what's been going on with our child. Now, he switched back to shorts and a tank top a few days ago, and the very first night, so there have been 3 nights so far. Last night was the 3rd night. The very first night, I was not permitted to sleep at all. I was not permitted to work that entire day. I was held by this technological achievement referenced in the past as invisible fence. I have numerous bills that are due in the next 4 to 5 days. I also don't even have a complete wardrobe. I've been wearing the same leggings, 8 to maybe 12 or 13 pairs of leggings, and blazer with a rotation of the same 5 to 6 shirts since I got my apartment. Again, Xavier has not been permitted or able to earn any income this entire time. Under that understanding, room and board would be provided and all of these things that they promised, compliance to all of these other services that they deemed necessary that were not, but they were all done. I've paid out of pocket every single month, without exception. So the first night since all of that took place, and this has been deemed almost an exact copycat version with a few, differences as what they already did to me when it was time for them to pay for everything they forced me to do. And I'm speechless about how to interpret this. So the first night, I had to just sit awake the entire night. The second night, I was permitted approximately 2 hours of sleep before we were woken up by several very nefarious, very unethical things taking place. So from about 2 in the morning to about 5 in the morning. And the third night, last night, I was permitted to sleep from about 2 in the morning until about 7 a.m. So the last 3 days, I've had about 7 or 8 hours of sleep. I and Xavier work together every day to make deliveries. Specifically, we protect each other from these allegations that have been made deceptively in an effort to continue a deceptive, malicious narrative about my identity and reputation. The narratives that have been being circulated locally have included but not been limited to the idea that Xavier and I have been working in some sort of illicit forum The idea that Xavier and I have been circulating unlawful items rather than food deliveries or Sephora or Home Depot deliveries. Having us both together in those circumstances allows us to both say, no, we were working from this time to this time. None of that took place. In the absence of Xavier being here with me while I go to work, I only have the experience one-sided to myself that in the past has been used to cause Xavier to literally go crazy when they tap into him and start telling him Heather is being intimate with other men. Heather has a side girlfriend or boyfriend. I'm not a lesbian, never have been, have no interest in being so, and I've never cheated on Xavier. When I met Xavier, I didn't even have desire to be in a relationship at all. He presented to me, as you all know, that his brother worked for the regional district attorney's office and that what I had been through and communicated on YouTube and all of the social media channels was understood and known to be unlawful, and that solutions were underway, and that I was going to go with him and receive access to this safe living situation where my children and I could live and grow and build ethically and morally and consciously. And when that did not happen, Xavier and I stayed together anyway. And the first 2 years that I suffered by myself with no stable home were followed by two more years that Xavier and I would spend together with no stable home. Throughout that time, we didn't go to nightclubs. We didn't engage in drug use. We didn't engage in alcohol use. We might have had a beverage of alcohol maybe 6 or 7 times total in the entire 4-year period that we've been together. Pot was the worst of what we ever did, and that was not in recreation. That was in suffering, pain, having to sleep on concrete while pregnant, and having to sleep on concrete while having contractions, and being denied health care, and being blatantly locked out of housing. It was promised on and off the line a number of times that there would no longer be permittable circumstances that caused Xavier and I to be without a safe, stable living situation. I have perceived that on the line takeovers with regards to Xavier, they've taken a phone that was not even his and a tablet that was not even his and accessed adult content websites to, quote, keep him in. Therefore, resulting in the decision that was allegedly made to end the room and board. I did nothing wrong. I haven't consumed any adult-themed content. My higher power doesn't even like me to listen to music, watch movies, nothing. I would say there is a significant amount of trauma that I still have if I hear a song or, loud music. My ribs are showing. My budget is lacking. My bills are due. I've been compliant to every demand. I've participated thoughtfully and fairly and given insight and intellectual understanding and advocacy of all people in all socioeconomic classes, all demographics, backgrounds, and understandings, including but not limited to myself and my children. And still, despite the fact that I have been working, when I worked Uber, I was doing 12 to 14-hour shifts every single day. When I first started food deliveries, I was doing the same. I would say 9 to 12 hours a day, every single day. When I began this platform about 3 months ago, I became aware that the higher authority was aware that I was working 12 to 14 hours a day, but that the authority at this level was attempting to destroy the evidence of that so that they would be deemed more deserving of the cushier apartment and the larger budget, etc., and so forth. I went through all of this compliant, doing every single thing I could at all times, being under pressure on average maybe 75% of my awake hours. Literally. And this is not new pressure. They're not coming to me saying, are you involved in this? Are you involved in that? They know without a doubt I'm not. They're coming to me asking me about the period of 2016 to 2019. Over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I have clarified and given context and insight as many times as I've been demanded to. Furthermore, they've been using extraction and deceptive reading. So you could not lie if you wanted to in the majority of these lines of questioning. Now they have Xavier engaged in some sort of invisible fucking fence, as I've described to you in the past. If you know, you know. And if you know, please hear me. And we have work to do. I need to deliver my deliveries. I need to do the work that I need to do. All the cars have been getting by without a problem. And so this effort over the last 3 days to keep me, again, displaced seems to be in direct conjunction and coordination with many other various malicious efforts and attempts. I did everything I could, understanding also that at my apartment, there was a team that was permitted to come into my lobby and continue spreading nefarious, slanderous lies, fill my lobby with huge moving boxes of inappropriate adult-themed content that I, at the end of a 14-hour or 12-hour work shift, would have to come home, pick up, and move to a dumpster because they would be stacked so high all over the lobby. They would address me as GoPro Solo Hobo Heather Gillespie in reference to the brand that I originally developed, GoPro Solo, with regards to the content that I was selling from 2016 to 2019. There has been no action, to my knowledge, taken against those individuals who have continued to stalk me as recently as 3 or 4 months ago in my apartment on Granville. I have not received any direct communication other than OTL communication from any law enforcement agency or the FBI, etc. And solutions other than room and board and compensation being promised have never been communicated or fulfilled. I remain separated from my 4 children, despite the fact that it's very clear, it's very evident that in my own energy, under my own free will and guidance, look, all those lines, they're not here, and I'm able to speak and articulate, and I'm not confused and freaked out like I was this morning. What a coincidence. With knowing all of that, I am very confused as to how it has been engineered and constructed that Xavier will be visible fenced to the porch of a school, sleeping all day in the heat, exposed to whoever, the general public, that various unknown individuals will come and bring him meals while I don't get to eat. This is my husband, the father of our 2.5-year-old child. And I will have to watch him eat. And then he's not going to be permitted to get into the vehicle and come to work or work on his art and sales or develop or enhance any of his skill sets for the purpose of making a profit to support our family. I don't really know what else to say. I don't really know how to address the situation any further, and I'm not quite sure what solutions should look like. But I can tell you that there are numerous groups. Most of the groups that come around here do not pay rent. They choose an apartment through some sort of internal communication, and most of the time they're very nice and well furnished. They don't bring with furniture. They don't even bring with clothing sometimes. These places will be furnished with clothing, furniture, food, and they will go in there and then they'll travel all around and live rent-free. While Xavier and I are dog-walked, invisible fenced, exploited, working obscene amounts of hours for less than the federal minimum wage. The solution to this, as I've stated so eloquently in the past, is to permit and fund an effort to seek truth, expose truth, after a reasonable ethical investigation has been performed by multiple third parties and a reasonable understanding that is tactful, graceful, and truth is created in circulation to any slanderous, falsely perpetrated narratives. And once that's done, that's when classification, as they've referred to it, can and should begin. Not before. Not before. You cannot classify individuals who you don't have an accurate understanding of. And in that understanding, once an individual is classified for the purpose of advocating for them to have safe, stable, ethical housing within their family and demographic of like-minded, similar thinking individuals with similar expectations with regards to what's permitted, what's not permitted, what's enjoyable, what's not enjoyable, what have you, then you move everyone into their space. How is it possible that I'm alive in this demographic and we are one of the very few who don't have a space? I haven't committed any crimes. I haven't done anything unethical. My rib cage is exposed. You could see my ribs protruding from my side. I weigh approximately 123 pounds at 5'9" on my flat feet without any, shoes on. I'm thin, and it's not because I'm not hungry. I'm purposefully, kind of curbing my appetite so that one meal will be sufficient most days. But I think at least two meals. And by one meal, I don't mean a $6 meal every day or a Taco Bell every day. I mean a salad, some rice, a lean protein. I've discussed this at the beginning of this communication, and that's not being permitted. So, but then you have Xavier, as I said, being given, they are bringing him stacks of pizzas, burgers, fries, and he's, and then they're encouraging him to become active in the nightlife. In the nightlife, not just in the nightlife, but in the nightlife of same-gendered couples. Does that sound like a plan that supports the reunification of our family to a traditional gender role monogamy, as we've communicated? The system promised Xavier and I directly to our faces. Xavier asked a question and was responded by the highest authority in this specific instance. So there's definitely a higher authority than this person, but this specific person, who is the highest authority in the room, will say, looked to Xavier and said, this institution is not in support of destroying families. Reunification is the goal. And then that was followed up with a number of other behaviors that would not necessarily align with that goal, right? So for Xavier and I to have a marriage or a relationship that's based in monogamy and have longevity within those roles, how on earth would it be deemed acceptable that he sleeps all day while I work all day, come and pick him up, only to drive behind him at the speed of 2 to 3 miles per hour while he wheels a bunch of miscellaneous perceived garbage that he doesn't even access up and down the street and stands outside of area nightclubs and bars until 2 or 3 in the morning? Does that sound like something that either myself or Xavier would voluntarily want to engage in? It's not. I promise you it's not. And then furthermore, coming to park at 2 or 3 in the morning and being woken up with the sun between 5 and 7 a.m. So I'm supposed to function on 3 to 5 hours of sleep each night? I don't understand. And then Xavier sleeps in the heat, exposed throughout the daytime. What is going on here? So anyways, I have done everything, that any human being could rationally do. I also want to put on the record again one more time. And by one more time, I don't mean let's go through all of the predatory behaviors and do demonstrations of them again. That's not at all what I mean. We've already deemed that it's unethical, unreasonable, and even detrimental to continue to force human beings to behave as models for understanding of other human beings. AI avatars, not humans running an AI agent, AI avatars can be used with verbal commands on any phone to create compelling videos that also support understanding within demographics that don't have it. You don't continue to harm any individual and say, oh, well, they're the model of this. Yeah, they're stable. They've just gone through actual hell, but we'd like to show you a reenactment of what it looks like to be domestically abused. What? That is what's been going on. All sorts of predatory things, as I was promised, non-predatory environments only, have been being dog walked through actual human bodies for the purpose of creating a demonstration to any other demographic. And the human body, they don't have any say-so. They don't get to sign themselves up for what they believe would be a good modeling experience. So I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. And, within that concern also comes a specific amount of comprehension of solutions, logistical follow through, start to finish mental models of these solutions, and fear or perceived unwillingness for the people who shook the deal hand and said, if you X, then we will Y. There's no hand anymore, but we've already shaken it. So what do we do now? If I've followed up on my end of the bargain, where is the reciprocity? And what is the long-term plan? And that's kind of just where I'm at right now. So I'm very concerned, very, very, very concerned. I attempted to move my demographic to another region. I was blatantly ignored. I don't really know what to do next. I do know that sleeping on the side of the road is not an acceptable option for me or for anyone. And I also know that there are numerous demographics that do not have a single person within their line that is subjected to that sort of treatment. So I hope that this video will get to someone who can invest what has it been now, 30 minutes? The 30 minutes of explanation that I've just provided in an effort to create really ethical solutions for all, because I'm not quite sure, how much more of this my body will be able to withstand. I'm in my 4th decade of life next year, I'm not a baby girl. I'm a grown-up. I have 4 babies. I would say a confident 70% of my graduating class is already living in their second home, if not have purchased a condo or a house. I haven't even been able to buy any property. I haven't been even approved for a single credit card. I got one $300 credit card approval, not the Apple store, not the Amazon store, no one. I got one single Citibank $300 credit card approval while I was living at the apartment on Granville, and someone stole it and used every single penny and never paid it back, despite the fact that the authority promised 1,000% that they would reimburse that money. So that's where I'm at. I need some new opportunities for money here, and I need them to come in coordination with the morals and values and ethics that I have and the wage that I deserve, that I've worked for, that I've invested in. We're not even talking about what would it look like from the perspective of a civil lawsuit to weigh out liability and put a dollar amount on that. Scratch all of that. We're not even talking about that. Just with regards, say I never went through any of that predatory unlawfulness. Say it was just a matter of, what have I gone to school for? What have I proven in previous jobs? What consistency and level of education do I have within those industries? What level of willingness do I have to learn new industries and ability? While going through all of this, I began learning AI models and learning language models and things of that nature, and was able to pick up on these concepts pretty easily, pretty quickly. So there is no limitation of path from where I'm sitting. From where I am sitting, there are many paths that should be right here at my feet, waiting for me to say, I choose you. But instead, this is what's going on, you know? And I am not, when I say paths at my feet, saying which one is for you, you know, you choose, I'm not saying random third-party men who I don't even know saying, oh, well, if you separate from your husband, you can come and sleep on my sofa for a few weeks, and then maybe if you decide to engage in sex with me, I'll let you stay a little longer. I don't want that shit. At all. Never have. If someone wants to partner or invest or teach or mentor in a non-predatory environment, I am all in. But this has been, my body is just tired, you know, is where I'm at. And from an emotional perspective, throughout the course of my life, I have given far more love than I have been able to receive. And so I'm functioning, as I've been for quite some time, in a deficit. And I would like, as I said before, maybe an into healthcare consulting, maybe an into real estate development, maybe an into something as you know, focused as universal basic income modeling, instruction, independent fundraising for, etc. and so forth. There are technology I'm interested in. I'm interested in cars. I'm interested in, promotions with regards to new and exciting ideas and causes. I'm interested in all of these things, but I'm more and mostly and 1000% dedicated to safe, stable housing and never having to be used in this way again. I should not be someone's demonstration. Xavier should not be laying on a sidewalk sleeping all day and then walking around, you know, while I follow him with the vehicle with all of his worldly belongings. This is ridiculous. It's obscene. Even if this was going to be the circumstances that we had to be here for a few weeks for whatever reason, we should be permitted to continue working every single day as we have for the last 5, 6, 7 months together, making deliveries while he pours into the art theme, the sales theme, what have you, from the vehicle. It is helpful for me to have him here. We need to behave in a way that the first priority is for the overall benefit of our family, our child. And the situation we're in that I'm not able to elaborate on with regards to our child is a very pressing set of circumstances. It continues to be overlooked in ways that I do not understand. We need help. We need a higher authority to look at this entire situation, beginning with 2016, the original sentencing of Dylan Smith, inmate number Y12173, with State's Attorney Wayne Jakowski in the Skokie Courthouse. And we need someone, truth seekers, truth finders, truth sharers, to give an unbiased, truthful 360-degree perspective and understanding for any sort of desirable outcomes to be permitted. So anyways, that's what's going on here, and I hope you guys have a great day. And yeah, thanks again.